Hello everyone, and welcome back. Have you ever noticed how ordinary people can shake entire governments when enough is enough? Around the world, citizens are rising, not with silence, but with voices, protests, and determination. They're standing against corruption, greed, and oppression, showing that even the most powerful leaders can be challenged by the people they govern. Today, we're exploring 10 nations where people have taken to the streets to demand justice, accountability, and change. This is Micode-TV, and I'm Lucas. Let's jump right into it. Number 10. The Philippines, fighting corruption in the floods. Imagine watching your home flood year after year, only to find out billions meant to protect you were stolen. That's the reality in the Philippines. On September 21st, Manila exploded with protests as tens of thousands demanded answers. The scandal: ghost infrastructure projects, dams never built, flood systems never completed. Nearly $2 billion just vanished into the pockets of officials and contractors. Meanwhile, families in Bulacan and beyond live in fear of the next storm. The protests grew stronger because the date was symbolic. September 21st, the anniversary of Ferdinand Marcos Sr.'s martial law. Protesters shouted, "Corruption then, corruption now!" Clashes broke out, police blocked roads, and water cannons soaked the streets. Yet the anger could not be drowned. So I ask you, if your taxes were stolen while your home sank underwater, would you stay silent? Or would you march too? Number 9. Indonesia, justice for Afan. Now let's fly to Indonesia. On August 25th, thousands protested lawmakers' outrageous housing allowances, almost 10 times the minimum wage. But what started as peaceful quickly turned into national outrage. On August 28th, a paramilitary police vehicle ran over and killed 21-year-old delivery worker Afan. His death became the symbol of injustice. Students, unions, and rideshare drivers rallied, crying out, "Justice for Afan." Protests spread across the nation. Fires burned, parliament buildings were attacked, and even President Prabowo had to cancel a trip to China to face the crisis. By the end, at least 7 people were dead and thousands arrested. Think about it. One young man's tragic death sparked a movement that shook the government. Doesn't that show how powerful unity can be? Number 8. Nepal, Gen Z takes the streets. Picture this. Thousands of young Nepalis holding placards, chanting, and standing up against corruption and nepotism. That's what happened from September 8th to 12th. It began with a social media ban, but for Gen Z, it was the last straw. They called out Nepo babies, political dynasties passing power to their children while ignoring the people's needs. Students accused leaders of selling out their generation's future. The protests turned deadly. At least 72 lives lost. Prime Minister K.P. Sharma Oli resigned, and Sushila Koirala stepped in as interim leader. Imagine being just 20 years old and realizing your generation has the power to bring down a government. Inspiring, right? Number 7. Argentina, the fight for education and healthcare. Buenos Aires, September 12th. Tens of thousands filled the streets. Their demand, funding for universities and hospitals. Why? Because austerity cuts by President Javier Milei had left pediatric hospitals without medicine and universities without teachers. One protester cried, "Children are dying. Teachers are leaving. This is catastrophic." Another shouted, "Knowledge itself is at risk." For 5 days, Argentina roared. By September 17th, lawmakers overturned the president's veto and restored some funding. Tears, hugs, and joy filled the streets. But here's the question. Why should citizens have to fight so hard for basic rights like healthcare and education? Number 6. France, austerity, and pension rage. France is no stranger to protests, and September proved it once again. Teachers, train drivers, hospital staff, even students marched against austerity and pension reforms. Their anger, billionaires getting richer while workers are asked to retire later and live on less. Placards read, "Tax the rich, not the poor." Protesters marched from Marseille's Old Port, chanting against President Macron and new Prime Minister Sébastien Lournaud, demanding funds for schools, hospitals, and public services. Placards read, "The streets should write the budget." Clashes left over 180 arrested, with 80,000 security forces deployed nationwide. From the 1968 uprisings to today, the French have shown the world that when leaders don't listen, the people take to the streets. Number 5. Serbia, tragedy at the train station. September in Serbia was heavy with grief and anger. It all began in November 2024 when the Novi Sad train station roof collapsed, killing 16 people. The cause? Alleged corruption and negligence in construction contracts. By 2025, the outrage hadn't faded. Students, opposition groups, and citizens demanded justice. Demonstrations grew larger, and on September 6th, tear gas and stun grenades filled the streets. International voices joined in, warning President Vučić that corruption was corroding democracy. But the protests haven't ended, and the question remains, will the people's persistence finally bring change? Number 4. Peru, pensions and protest. On September 21st, Lima erupted. A pension reform forcing every adult to join a provider triggered massive protests, but that wasn't the only issue. Corruption, crime, and broken promises all fueled the anger. Students led the way, waving flags and demanding accountability from President Dina Boluarte, whose approval rating is now just 2.5%. Imagine that. Almost an entire country rejecting its leader. Mining operations shut down, clashes injured dozens, and the calls for reform grow louder each week. Peru's youth are showing that silence is no longer an option. Number 3. Bangladesh, the Quota Uprising. How can we forget the protests that shook Bangladesh in 2024? It started with job quotas favoring freedom fighters' descendants, but it became so much more. Students demanded fairness, merit, and justice. The government's brutal response left over 1,500 dead and tens of thousands injured. Prime Minister Sheikh Hasina eventually resigned and fled the country. Today, Bangladesh has a new interim government, but the scars remain. Think about it. Students with books in their hands faced bullets and still changed the course of history. Would you have their courage? Number 2. Lebanon, the October Revolution. Lebanon's uprising in October 2019 began with something small, attacks on WhatsApp calls. But it turned into a revolution. Citizens from every religion, background, and city united against corruption and a broken system. They formed human chains, organized feminist marches, and even after Prime Minister Saad Hariri resigned, the protests didn't stop. The devastating Beirut port explosion in 2020 only deepened the rage. Lebanon's system hasn't fully changed, but the people showed something powerful: unity beyond division. That's what the true meaning of revolution is. Number 1. Sri Lanka, the Aragalaya movement. And finally, Sri Lanka's Aragalaya protests in 2022 began with candlelight vigils, but grew into a nationwide revolt. Corruption, food shortages, inflation at 74%, and the Rajapaksa family's grip on power fueled the anger. Youth, unions, artists, women, and people of all ethnicities camped at Gala Face Green, creating Gota Gogama, a village of resistance. On July 9th, protesters stormed the presidential palace, forcing President Gotabaya Rajapaksa to flee and resign days later. Despite crackdowns, arrests, and social media bans, the movement proved unstoppable. Though struggles remain, the Aragalaya taught the world one thing: when people stand as one, even the most powerful rulers cannot hold on forever. And there you have it, 10 nations where people rose against corruption and oppression. Which of these protests inspired you the most? Do you think they'll create lasting change? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to like this video, subscribe, and ring the bell so you never miss our deep dives into global stories. This is Lucas from Micode-TV, signing off. Click one of the videos on your screen to explore more amazing top 10 lists with us. See you there.